Okay, in this lesson we're going to look a little bit more at the fundamental building blocks of song composition, namely the chords which are going to lie underneath anything that you put on top, melody lines, bass lines, all of those kind of things. In the other lessons we talked kind of more vaguely and just went through ideas that you could try out rather than giving you solid theory that you could go away, research and then kind of work out in a slightly more ordered fashion. So we're going to work in the key of C major, purely because we don't have to talk about sharps and flats, and that just makes things a little bit easier to kind of visualise perhaps. And it's difficult on the guitar to describe this in a completely linear fashion, because if you do that you actually have to move up the fretboard and do bar chord shapes. So the first thing I'm going to do is just play the chords in open position, just so that they're easy to replicate and so they're sticking in one place, and then I'll move up the neck and explain what the difference between those two things is. So in a C major scale we have notes going from C all the way back around through D, E, F, G, A, B and back to C again, and it goes obviously up an octave when you get to C, and each of those notes could have a chord built on top of it. Very basically, really quick thing that you can actually work out in your head or write down on a piece of paper, if you write those letters out and do two lots of them, so go through twice, and I'll put a little section of letters up for you to see, then you could just basically hop over, do a leapfrog and another leapfrog, and that'll give you each chord. So a C and then E and then G gives you a C major chord, and then a D, an F and an A will give you a D minor chord, and you just hop through. It'll be a little bit more clear when you can see the graphics that I'm going to add in. So we're going to start with the C major chord. It's the first chord in the C major scale. Next chord is D minor, then E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and back to C major. Now with all of those chords you can hear a definite progression, and they all seem to be pulling to the next chord and eventually back to C. It's a very, very strong sound, and it's something that you probably will have heard all over the place. You'll probably know that instinctively without me having to demonstrate it. Now, before I was explaining that that's actually different in open position from the way we should do it, purely because the pitch is jumping around an awful lot. C, the first C, should be the lowest pitch chord that we play. But in this instance, the lowest pitch chord is actually the E minor, because it's got an open E string just there. To get around that, we can play bar chord shapes going up the neck. We get C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major again at the top. Now there, everything ascends up so that each note follows the correct order of pitch, and it doesn't jump around. Now there's no reason why you can't compose songs based purely around the open position chords. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you talk about the theory of it and the way that it all fits together, we should ascend in pitch, but really it doesn't matter for the idea of what we're doing just here. So, how do you work that into a song? Well, every single chord in a major scale has a relationship to each of the other chords. They're all linked intrinsically because they're all from the same major scale, in this case C. They all have the same fundamental set of notes in them. Now, if you take the first chord, for example C, and then pair it with the fourth chord and the fifth chord, which are going to be F and G, we get a very popular progression, and this will be probably familiar to you, and it's been used in songs like Bop, Wild Thing. You Can Call Me Out by Paul Simon has a variation on this, so it goes C, F, G. Putting that into a sequence. It's not going to set the world on fire, people have heard lots before, but it works very, very well. You could vary it a little bit by going 1, 4, 5 and then back to 4. And then you could do other progressions, like 2, 5, 1 is going to be a very strong ending. It'll sound a little bit cheesy, and you'll know what I mean when I play it, but it's very popular, it gets used all over the place. So 2 is going to be an E, D minor, and then the 5 is going to be G, and the 1 is going to be C. So again, the 2, 5, 1 is going from the D minor to the 5, which is G, to the 1, which is C. Now if I throw that into a 1-4-5, it gives it a very strong, definite ending. A little bit cheesy, but it works very well. Now you could literally pick 3, 4, 5 chords from this scale and just jumble them up in a hat and then pick them out in a random order, and you'll probably get a progression which sounds semi-decent, and even if it doesn't, it would require relatively little tweaking to make it sound interesting. So I could play a 6, 5, 2, 4, so that's going to be 6 is A minor, 5 is G major, 2 is D minor, and F is the 4. So and then I just at the end put a 5 in and went back to the C to 1, and it just pulls it all together. That was just random numbers, I just picked them off the top of my head. And obviously I have some experience with this, so it's a little bit difficult for me to be completely spontaneous with it, because I know that certain things are going to work. But you could try it yourself, and you'll see that basically any set of chords is going to have something in there that you can use, even if it's going to involve a bit of cutting out of stuff which doesn't sound good. It's relatively easy to do. At least you've got a framework to work with it. Now this works for every single major key, and the most important thing to remember when you're working through this is the pattern of major and minor chords. So at any major key, first of all, to work out how to play the scale, you just start on a note, say you start on F sharp, for the sake of argument. I move up a tone, which is 2 frets, so that's from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret. Up another tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone gives you the major scale, and then on the guitar, tone is 2 frets, semitone is 1 fret, really straightforward. And then to play a chord on top of each of those notes, you either play a major or minor, or a diminished in one example, and that's going to go major for the first chord, minor for the second chord, minor for the third, major for the fourth, major for the fifth, minor for the sixth, diminished for the seventh, and back to major, which is the 8th, which is the same as the chord you started on, 1 octave higher in pitch. The diminished chord has a slightly unusual combination of notes. In a major chord you have the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th to make that major, 1, 3 and 5. In a minor chord you have the 1st, the flattened 3rd and the 5th. The flattened 3rd makes it into a minor chord, and in diminished chord you actually have a flattened 3rd and a flattened 5th, which gives it a very unusual sound. So the B diminished has a weird, slightly tense, almost nasty sound, because it's got that tritone interval in there between the root note and the 5th, which has been flattened. But in context that sounds very good, and it resolves it very powerfully. So that's everything you need to know to write a really strong chord sequence in a major scale. I'll put some ideas in the little information box, which is probably below, although YouTube moves it around all over the place, so in a couple of years' time it might be behind me or something weird. So check that. I'll also try and put a link through to a couple of songs which use these progressions, so you can kind of just click on them and have a listen. I'll probably put those as annotations around here, so that you could just click and go on to them, which means I've got to stand here and just look around for a minute whilst they pop up. Ah, there you go. That's 4 songs I should have found that give you some examples of different chord progressions that I've talked about. Hope this has been informative. I'm going to do a companion lesson for this, hopefully in a warmer environment, because my fingers are turning blue. And that's going to cover how the major scale is related to the minor scale, and possibly touch a little bit on modal scales as well. And then somewhere down the line I'll talk about how you could draw all of this together with the bass lines, melody lines and the chords, and build a song, hopefully. I'm Campbell, standing in the middle of a snowy field with people sledging on a hill behind me and no gloves on, playing the guitar.